Welcome guys to the Scoundrel's Den, and the Scoundrel's Den is finally at Wildrift. I cannot wait to be taking this journey in Wildrift with you guys. It's the game I've been waiting for. It's the game that's going to marry my love of League of Legends and Vainglory together, and I tell you what guys, I've been playing the beta and it's absolutely incredible. In this video, we're going to cover some basic beginner topics including settings and UI, but we're also going to go into some more advanced topics like attack moving, split pushing, and some concepts that you're going to need to learn to really take off in Wildrift, as well as giving you some champion suggestions for getting started in this game. I hope you enjoy it. If you like the content, feel free to like and subscribe. It would mean a lot to me. Okay, let's very quickly look at the UI to begin with. I've just labeled it so you can see exactly what each of these particular tabs mean, and we're going to go into it in a bit more detail in a moment. At the bottom, you've got Store, Champion Collection, Loadouts, Leaderboards, Inventory, and Missions, as well as the Event box over on the left-hand side. And at the top, the most important tab there is the Settings tab, but we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So let's now go through the UI and kind of go through some of the more important aspects of it for new players. So firstly, let's talk a little bit about the UI and some of the more important tabs and important things to be aware of. I do trust that most of you will be able to explore the UI in your own time and figure it out. But firstly, the currencies in Wildrift. There are three types of currencies. There are blue motes, there are wild cores, and there are poro coins. Blue motes you get, this is the free-to-play currency. This is what you'll grind by doing missions or completing matches. The wild cores are the premium currency, which will give you access to these wild cores, which allow you to purchase the skins as well as purchase heroes or champions a little bit more quickly. The third of which is poro coins, which I'll talk about in a moment. So you can see all champions right now are available for 5,500 blue motes. In regular League of Legends, the PC version, these get discounted over time. That may happen in Wildrift, but likely not so soon. Skins are only available, for the most part, with wild cores. You can also buy, I'm guessing these are wards, so ward skins, which are available with wild cores as well. And then you have poro coins, which you unlock over the course of doing missions and what have you. And these unlock poses, which I believe are champion select poses or the champion detail pages, and you can essentially unlock poses for your favorite champions. They're all available on this poro coin store bit. So that's the three currencies and what they do in Wildrift. Some more important tabs, we have the mission tab. You will get both standard and challenge missions that happen over the course of the day, and you complete those missions to get you points that go towards your weekly chests. And as you can see, the weekly chests will give you experience, blue motes, and poro coins. You need to come here to complete them and unlock those chests. Another important tab is the events tab. There will be events that happen throughout, I guess, the launch of Wildrift, and you can go over to the missions. Make sure you come here, click on everything you can to get all of the free rewards. As you can see, there are certain missions to complete over the course of the first 5 days of playing here, and they'll get you access to special rewards. So this is called the Loadout tab, and it's actually a really cool tab, and I recommend that all new players get to grips with it and kind of understand it. You will be able to select a loadout for any champion that you currently own in the game. You can even select loadouts for champions that you don't own. But let's say you want to set a loadout for Yasuo. You can select your basic rune setup. You can also set your summoner spells. So let's say I want to change out for heal maybe. I just select heal and do that. If I want to change one of my particular rune setups, I don't really want Sweet Tooth, for instance. Let's say I want Pathfinder. I want to change regeneration for Backbone. You do that and it all gets locked in. If you want to change any particular items in this setup below, so I'm not too keen on Blade of the Ruined King start for Yasuo. So let's say I want to swap. I want to swap this with this as my first item, this with this. Blade of the Ruined King comes a little bit later down the line because I want to make sure that I get my critical strike. Let's say that I don't want Bloodthirster and I would much prefer to have something like Phantom Dancer. I switch it in like that, and then the Phantom Dancer gets switched over here. Bang! Item setup complete, and that's now currently called, I can call this whatever I like. Let's call it Standard, I can't spell at all, guys. Standard Yasuo. So let's call it Standard Yasuo, and bam, Standard Yasuo build. Locked in, and that will be my loadout for whenever I select the Standard Yasuo build in game. It will give me this item loadout already prepared for me, and bam, there you go. It's a really good thing for new players to get to grips with, and I thoroughly recommend that you kind of explore this and understand it as much as possible. So the first thing that I recommend that you do when you're new to the game is go into training and then tutorials. So you press play, training tutorials, and go through all of the basic tutorials. This will teach you how to play the game on a mechanical level better than I will be able to explain to you. So do that first. Secondly, I recommend that you go to practice mode, lock in whatever champion you see fit. Doesn't matter because you can change in practice mode. And once you're there, we'll talk a little bit through settings, which will help you improve as a player quickly. Now that we're in the practice tool, I just want to take a moment to appreciate how good the practice tool is for Wildrift on launch. It is unbelievably good, kind of the tools that they've given us to get going from the get-go, even in open beta, and this is only obviously going to improve as we get towards global launch. You can level up, you can reset your level down to 0, you can give yourself invincibility, you can have 0 cooldown, you can give yourself gold, you can set the AI on or off, you can do the same things that you would do to your champion, to their champion, as well as creating an enemy dummy to be able to attack, which you can just see gets destroyed by my fountain. You have the ability to remove minions or add minions. You have an ally dummy, which you can use for skills that would benefit your allies. You can remove those dummies, you can respawn, you can set the Fog of War on and off, and you can change champion in the middle of practice mode to any champion that you so choose, even the ones that you don't own, so you can test them out before you buy them. It's an incredible practice tool. Now that we're in it, let's take a look at some of the settings that are going to help you kind of get to grips with the game. So the sort of, I guess, the graphical or device settings are the first ones that come up. I turn screen shake off. I have my map brightness and Fog of War brightness about middle. In-game chat I set to team. There's no point all chatting for me unless you want to BM people. I set my scoreboard to full screen because I think the half screen one looks kind of weird. My device can handle 60 FPS, so I've set it. And I like to have character inking on. So you can see this is character inking off right now, and you'll be able to notice that there is no like big black line round graves at this point in time. If I turn character inking on, you'll notice that there's just a little bit of a black line that kind of surrounds graves, and this kind of makes them pop out from the terrain a little bit more. It almost looks like a second shadow, but yeah, it just kind of helps graves pop a little bit from the map, and that helps, I think, for visual clarity, in my opinion. Now, some of the in-game settings. Portrait lock. Really, really important feature. You learn about it in the tutorial. It allows you, when there are multiple enemies nearby, to lock onto one of them for basic attacks and abilities by merely selecting their portraits from the ones that sort of appear above the ability screen. 100% have this turned on. Target priority, lowest health percentage or lowest health absolute. That really depends if you're not manually targeting. I personally prefer low health absolute for the most part because it means they're the one that you're most likely to kill if you're trying to focus them down. I don't like to have force attack follow on. It basically means that if you have force attack follow, you will chase a target once you're locked onto them, trying to basic attack them. I don't like that. Sometimes it means if you're not paying attention, you can kind of get baited, so I don't have force attack follow on. Dash in move direction. Essentially, this is an option that I think you should have turned on in all circumstances. Dash in move direction essentially means this. I'm moving around, and this is a dash. So this is Graves E, it's quick draw, it's a dash. I can do it in any direction that I so choose by using my normal ability targeting. However, if I just tap the ability, it will move in the area or the direction that I'm running. And I think that you should always have that turned on. I don't see any reason not to have that turned on, personally. Okay, carrying on. Lock move stick. Again, that locks your movement analog stick in the lower left corner. That's what I personally prefer. Locked center buttons. Those are your buttons that you use for basic attacking and abilities. I lock both of those. Action cancel method. This is something that I personally, and actually I'm going to show you. I'm going to swap champion to show you. I'm just going to go down to here. Swap. Let's go to Lee Sin. Okay, right. I'm going to show you why I think that having this set to default is better. Okay, so let's go on the alternative. Alternative means that outside of a certain range, as you can see here, when it goes red, outside of a certain range of your ability, you will just cancel the ability. So you need to have it within this range of the small X that surrounds the circle around your ability. Otherwise, you won't cancel it. That's all very well and good, but with someone like Lee Sin, when you have a really long range ability, a long range skill shot on your Q, the default one allows you to drag over to this X on the right hand side instead of having it tied to a range outside of the circle of the ability, which I think is much more helpful because I sometimes like to drag all the way out to kind of target the ability based on where an enemy champion is sometimes. So yeah, I personally prefer to have it set to the default setting, just because it gives you a bit more flexibility with actually targeting those abilities. Okay, let's talk a little bit about aim panning now. Essentially, this is for abilities that extend past your field of vision. They'll pan the camera for you. So the example that they're using is Lux. So let's switch out to Lux, and I'll show you what aim panning looks like with and without. Wherever Lux is there. Okay, confirm. We're going to need to level up to level 5 so we can get our ultimate. Cool. So this is what aim panning looks like with aim panning on. It'll move the camera a little bit. Whereas if I have aim panning off, it won't move the camera at all. You see that? So with aim panning on, it doesn't make that much difference to Lux's ultimate personally, but it just moves the camera a little bit. So it allows you to move the camera just a little bit more when you're aiming a long range ability, and then it will bring you back to the central location. So that's what aim panning does here. But though realistically, when you're casting Lux's ultimate, you're going to want to look on the minimap, and you might do something like this. So say you're looking for the bot lane, boom. And Lux's ultimate on Wildrift is truly global, by the way. So you can hit all the way to the enemy nexus. So aim panning just allows you to pan a little bit with the camera. Ability minicam, completely up to you. That basically has an ability, like when you fire an ability off, when it heads towards a target location, it'll show you what happens to that ability. Why not? Semi-lock camera. This, in my opinion, is one of the most important features in the game, especially if you're on an iPad like me. Semi-lock camera will either get rid of the little eye that is here, or it will bring it up. I personally like semi-lock camera because it allows you to just mostly focus on your character. If you have semi-lock camera off, what happens is this. And I think it can get a little bit confusing. If you touch on the screen or pan, it just pans away. Like you can pan away like this. So you can't see across the map as easily, but it will show you things that are directly in front of you. But however, you can kind of just do that on the minimap anyway. So you can do that on the minimap anyway. So I've always felt that just having your camera locked, it helps focus you on your character, especially if you're new to the game, and it'll also keep it in that location as well, so you can see a little bit further around you, which can be really helpful in fights. And if you're really interested in seeing what's going on the map, just tap or hold on the minimap, and you can pan around like that. So I think that having semi-lock camera on is actually just a better way of playing the game, in my personal opinion. There's minimap autopathing and warding aim assist. Warding aim assist essentially allows you to place a ward in a brush you see. Like this, it will automatically place it in the brush. The brush will light up if it's selected, and you'll automatically get a ward in the brush, which is obviously generally the location that you tend to have wards placed in the game. Minimap autopathing, so I can tap on the minimap, and it will autopath me somewhere. If you have that turned off, by the way, what will happen on the minimap is when you tap on the minimap, it will purely just pan you to that location. If you want to pan on the minimap with minimap pathing turned on, you just hold your finger on the minimap a little bit longer, and that's how you get a minimap pan. So those are the settings that I currently use for Wildrift. I think it's going to help you kind of get to grips with the game and play at a better level much more quickly. So hopefully you guys found that useful. And now let's jump into some of the basics about Wildrift, including meta and kind of the map and things that you should expect going into your first few games. Before we move on, I do want to talk about custom button layouts. As I said previously, I was going to mention this at the end. Like with any sort of analog stick mobile game at the moment, you can essentially change whatever you like about the setup of the buttons and where they are positioned on the screen. This is personal preference. I recommend that you play around with it, find what feels comfortable to you, and essentially run with whatever makes you play the game to the best of your ability. I personally stick with the default. I might change over time. Haven't been playing long enough to really get to grips, and I'm probably going to end up playing on a phone eventually, so I think I'm just going to stick with the normal tablet layout for the time being. But essentially, do what you feel feels comfortable and set your buttons up exactly the way that you would like, and honestly, it's personal preference all the way. So let's take a brief look at the map here in the Wildrift practice mode. And I've kind of taken Fog of War off to be able to explain things to you in greater detail. Okay, so when you start the game, you'll either start on blue side or red side. This is blue side, and this is red side. Blue side, what you'll find is that when the game starts, the camera will stay locked and it will not rotate. And you will see that the Baron lane is on the top side of your map, and the Dragon lane is on the bottom side of your map. So Baron lane and Dragon lane are the two symbols used to signify where the meta is kind of orientated. So in normal League of Legends, because the map is not mirrored, you'll find that top laners go top lane and the 2 bot laners, the AD carry and support, generally tend to go towards the bot lane. But because the map is mirrored, and when you start on the red side of the map, what will happen is that the camera will start here, and then it will turn 180 degrees so that you end up having the same orientation as if you were playing on blue side. But what that does mean is the Baron lane and the Dragon lane are swapped over. So the Dragon lane will end up being on your top side of your screen, and the Baron lane will end up being on the bottom side of your screen. There are also some useful arrow indicators that tell you this at the start of the game as well. But just be aware that Baron lane is your general solo lane, so one person will go there, and Dragon lane is generally your duo lane. And actually, Riot have actually kind of, I wouldn't say enforced, but have suggested this meta, as they also have these indicators that say solo lane and duo lane. So let's have a brief tour of the map. Each lane has 3 turrets on both your side and the enemy side. The 3rd turret is an inhibitor turret, and once you kill this turret, stronger minions will spawn in that lane, and it'll be harder for the enemy to defend and easier for you to attack. In the jungle, you have 3 camps on either side. You have your blue side jungle, which is your wolves, your blue buff or your blue sentinel, and your gromp. On the red side jungle, you have your raptors, your red brambleback, and then your krugs. The blue buff gives you either bonus energy or bonus mana regeneration, accompanied with health regeneration once you kill it. And the red buff will give you increased damage on your basic attacks, as well as slowing on your basic attacks as well, causing a burn over time. So both the red buff and blue buff in conjunction provide very powerful buffs coming from the jungle, making the jungler a very powerful unit. In the river, you have these things called river scuttlers. They are kind of minions that don't attack back. They are quite high HP, and they make it pretty difficult to kill without the use of smite. Once you kill these, they will migrate towards the center of the river, where they will entrench themselves in the river, providing an area of vision for the team that killed them, as well as providing a speed boost to any allied champions running through that area. The same thing can be said on the top side of the map. Rift Herald has just spawned. Rift Herald is a minion that spawns before Baron. And Rift Herald, once taken, will allow you to place this in a lane. And once you place the Rift Herald in a lane, it will walk down that lane and it will start to attack the turrets for you, providing a large amount of damage to those turrets. So it's a very powerful turret pushing tool. The Rift Herald spawns at 6 minutes and can only be killed once. Dragons start spawning at 4 minutes, and there are 4 different elemental dragons of which all can be killed before the Elder Dragon spawns. Each dragon will give you a different buff depending on the element that it is. Right now, this is the Cloud Dragon. A Cloud Dragon will give you a percentage movement speed bonus that is doubled outside of combat. Infernal Dragon will give you a flat damage increase. A Ocean Dragon will give you a percentage of physical and magical vamp, which allows you to regenerate life through dealing damage. And a Mountain Dragon will give you a percentage health-based shield after 5 seconds of not taking damage. Once all 4 elemental dragons have been killed, and those buffs are permanent and they last the entire game, the Elder Dragon will spawn. And the Elder Dragon will spawn with one of the random 4 elements. It will give you an empowered version of that bonus, which stacks, and then also allow you to deal extra damage to enemies. And that extra damage is very devastating. It is true damage, which goes through all resistances, and it also burns them over time. So the Elder Dragon is a very important target. At 10 minutes, Baron Nashor will spawn. Baron Nashor is another game-ending objective that is very difficult to take. Upon taking Baron Nashor, you will get an AD and AP bonus, which increases your damage overall, and standing near allied minions will buff them, allowing them to be much more effective at taking enemy turrets and taking damage from enemy turrets as well, allowing you to siege and end the game much more quickly. So those are the major objectives on the map. Let's talk a little bit about the meta. Okay, so starting off, let's talk about the lanes and what they're comprised of. We're going to begin by looking at the Dragon lane. And on the map on the left-hand side, you'll see this is a map that is flipped over. This is a red side map, so Dragon lane happens to be on the top side. And you'll see the Dragon lane, or the bot lane, is usually made up of 2 players. A marksman, or a carry, and a support. The marksman or carry is usually a ranged attack damage carry or a mage, and they often stay in lane farming the minions and getting as much gold as possible. They generally have the most impact in teamfights and skirmishes and often scale well into the late game, some examples being Jinx, Ezreal and Vayne. The support player can be a bit flexible. They're tank, utility or mage. They're designed to protect or set up your marksman and bot laner, and you often have a lot of 2v2 fights in the bot lane. They don't usually farm, and they often roam across the map to mid lane and jungle, some examples being Blitz, Soraka, Sona and Braum. In the mid lane, this is a very flexible role, but it's often a mage or an assassin. Their position is to farm the mid lane. They push those waves in, and they often look for roams to bot or top. They need to be aware of the map and where their enemies are, especially their enemy mid laner, because you're going to want to follow them and try and impact the map as much as possible. Mid lane is often the lane that generally tends to snowball the other lanes and carry that way. Some examples being Annie, Orianna, Yasuo, and Zed. They are often the role that is designed to take out the enemy carry, or at least set up the team and be big in team fights. The next lane that we're going to talk about, or the next role that we're going to talk about, is the jungle. It's a very flexible role and can be a tank, a bruiser, an assassin, a mage, or even a marksman. I'm looking at you, Jungle Ezreal. The role of a jungler is to clear jungle camps, gank lanes, take neutral objectives, and generally just be a nuisance on the map. You have to be very aware of the map state, especially where your enemies are, and especially your enemy jungler. You need to be looking at every lane whenever possible and deciding which lanes are best to gank, and combining that with your jungle pathing, as well as considering some counter-jungling opportunities. Counter-jungling is when you step into the enemy jungle and try to take away some of their camps to deny them farm and experience. It's often called the most impactful and the most important role in the game because of how much it impacts each of the individual lanes. Some examples being Lee Sin, Vi, Jarvan, Amumu, and Gragas. The last lane, Baron lane, or top lane as it's known in the PC version, is a flexible role, but it's often a role player, so you generally tend to play what your team needs, and that can be a tank, a duelist, or a bruiser, and you're often called the 1v1 master. You generally tend to get into a lot of 1v1 fights in the top lane. It's often not as focused by the jungle as other lanes, generally due to the fact they don't always have the impact that something like the mid or the bot lane would have in terms of winning the game. However, you can be a solo win condition with the likes of split pushers, split pushing being the ability to push down the lane by yourself and try and take down the turrets without the help of anybody else. And so, you know, top lane can be very impactful when played with the right champion and in the right hands. Some examples being Jax, Fiora, Camille, Malphite, and Singed. So hopefully that's given you a bit of an idea about the state of the meta and the way that you play the game in Wildrift. This may change over time, of course, as Wildrift begins to mature and get its own meta, but this is the meta that was kind of transferred over from the PC version. Okay, we're going to briefly now cover items, runes, and then also summoner spells. Items you can find in the loadout screen. I would recommend that you go through them and you read what each of the items do. They all have a specific purpose in the game, and I can't really explain all of them in this video, but you'll find them in build guides. You'll also find them from content creators and players, but I would recommend that you go through and read each of the items so you have a basic understanding of what each of the items does. They are handily separated out into physical, magic, defense, and then boot upgrades, which are all part of the game, and all champions benefit from different items in different ways. You'll see the runes here. You have a keystone rune, which is your rune that has like the most impact in your overall playstyle. You'll unlock them as you level up. And beyond the keystone rune, you're going to then have 3 separate rune types. You'll have a domination rune, which is often an aggressive rune, either dealing damage or increasing your damage dealing potential. You'll have a defensive rune, which is a resolve rune, and then you'll have an inspiration rune, which is usually a utility rune of some sort. So you'll have an offensive, a defensive, and a utility rune as well. You'll also have access to summoner spells, which you'll see here. Each of the summoner spells has a short video to show you what it does. I would recommend going through and looking at all of them so you can get up to speed about what of those each individual summoner spells offer to you. So let's now talk about some more general tips, like CSing. This is something that not everybody will be aware of how to do coming from other mobile MOBAs, although my Vainglorians, I'm looking at you, I'm sure you know what's going on here. And CSing is the kind of the concept of last hitting a minion. The minion health bar will glow white when it is last hittable with a basic attack, and that's going to allow you to claim the full bounty on the minion, with melee minions giving you 65 gold, ranged minions giving you 40 gold, and cannon minions giving you 85 gold. If you do not get the last hit, you will get a smaller percentage of the gold, although you will not get absolutely nothing. So it is often better to try and last hit, otherwise you will not be getting all of the gold available to you in lane. And you can also last hit with your abilities. Your abilities are a good way to push the lanes and get as much gold as possible out of the lanes as you can. So make sure that you practice this. I would recommend going into the practice mode and just practice last hitting the minions in lane to ensure that you're going to get the most gold out of your laning phase, because gold is how you buy items. Okay, speaking of items, the shop, which you can access by clicking on the small gold icon that you see on your left-hand side of the screen under the minimap. The shop has a variety of items that you can browse, which we talked about previously, and each of your champions will have specific build paths which work for them in certain scenarios. The gold that you get from killing minions and killing enemies, you can then go back and spend. You can pre-buy items so that the item components will pop up and you don't even need to open the shop, or you can go into the shop to explore it in greater detail and find the right item for the right situation. Remember, you don't need to complete an item once you've started to build towards it. If something else is better for that situation, you can always just keep the component in your inventory and then build an item further down the line. Wards, you can see here being highlighted the little area of the screen which has a ward placement. Wards provide a small area of vision. You can store up to 2 at a time and place 2 on the map, and then they will refresh over time. As you can see now, that small area has got a timer of it of now currently 110 seconds. Placing wards is really important for the game. It gives all of your team the vision. It will allow you to spot out enemies as they walk across those areas that you have covered with the ward. It's a very integral part of playing League of Legends, and I would recommend that you get into the habit of warding brushes and warding areas on the map to help give your team the extra information that they need to win the game. Honestly, as most League of Legends players will tell you, warding does indeed win games. Okay, now we're going to look at leveling up. You can level up an ability every time that you gain a level, and each ability in the game can be leveled up 4 times, with your ultimate being leveled up 3 times. The max level in the game is 15, which is 3 levels lower than the PC version, and your ultimate is unlocked at level 5, level 9, and level 13, with the third level being able to go into the ultimate at level 13. In general, it is advised every time you can put a point into your ultimate, which is the 4th ability closest towards the ward. As you can see, mine is currently on a 40-second cooldown. Every time you can put an ability point into your ultimate, it is suggested that you do so, because they are usually the most impactful or most powerful ability that you have access to. So let's go into some more advanced topics, something called attack moving. This is a very simple way of attacking and moving at the same time. All you need to do is move your character with the joystick, have a target locked on, and tap the attack button as you are moving. If you're doing it at the right rhythm, your unit or your champion will attack and move over the course of the fight. As you can see here, I am moving and attacking, and it's a very, very basic technique to allow you to be able to reposition in fights whilst also simultaneously dealing damage. It's something that is integral to pretty much all MOBAs, and it's especially good for the marksman role, as marksmen often need to move and reposition in fights, but also want to be able to deal damage at the same time. Earlier I talked about split pushing, which is a very specific technique used to essentially try and put pressure on the map by yourself. In this particular example, I'm showing you a game of Jax where I end up killing the enemy jungler, and then I use the time in the lane alone to be able to push down the waves and then push onto the turret. It is designed to draw attention to you and put pressure on the enemy to respond. If they don't, you're going to get free turrets and potentially even take down an inhibitor turret. The goal of split pushing is to push one lane and take as many turrets in that lane as possible, and then potentially even threaten the nexus if you have enough minions to work with. It's a very, very solid win condition tactic if you have the right champion, Jax being a prime example of that. Counter jungling is an advanced jungle technique that you'll eventually start to learn, and it is the process of moving into the enemy jungle and stealing their jungle camps. As you can see here, I'm moving into the enemy jungle and taking away their red brambleback. This is a couple of kind of overall goals. The main goal is to deny golden experience from the enemy jungler, but also if you're taking the buffs, you're going to get access to buffs and have the uptime of your buffs potentially be twice as long. You can also look to kill the enemy jungler in their jungle, and that will serve the same purpose, as well as taking away some of their camps. Ganking. You might think, well, this isn't really an advanced topic, but not everybody will have an idea of what ganking is when it comes to mobile MOBAs. And ganking is the process of coming from the jungle into a lane and looking to kill or pressure the enemy players. It's very useful for snowballing lanes or putting the enemies behind. In this particular example, walking to the lane, I kick the Ashe back towards my Vayne, and then we put pressure on them and eventually end up killing the Ashe with a successful gank. So this is what a jungler's primary role is. You're either going to be counter jungling as much as possible and farming, or you're going to be looking to gank your lanes as much as you can as well. Peeling. You may see this this term used a lot when you're playing the game. It's the process of blocking or disrupting enemies who are trying to kill or attack your key team members, and it's often done by supports to protect their marksman or their mid laner, or just any target on your team that is of high value. And you'll see this done a lot with CC applied to those aggressive players that are trying to pressure out your key members of the team. So finally, just to round out this video, I do want to talk about some of the champions that are particularly good in each role. And you can see here at the top, I'm going to separate these out into their individual roles, as you can see here. We're going to start off with Marksman, and I'm going to tell you a couple of champions that I think would be good for you to focus on as a new player. First of all, Ashe. Really simple marksman. She has some very basic abilities and is pretty easy to understand, really focused around just using her volley and then building up stacks on her Q and using that to deal damage to enemies. Jinx is a really simple AD carry to get to grips with. Again, a big focus on basic attacking as a primary way of dealing damage, and as a new player, that's a really easy champion to understand. Misfortune, if you get access to her, is another really simple AD carry that I would recommend trying to play if you get your hands on her. She's, again, very simple, but she's not a champion that you'll get unlocked at the very beginning. Vayne is also a pretty simple AD carry, although it can be a little bit more mechanically intensive than some others. But really, when you're starting off playing the AD carry role, you do want to focus on champions that are a little bit more, I guess, basic attack focused. Once you start to upgrade and once you start to get to a slightly better position, you can start to play people like Ezreal, who is a bit more skill shot focused. You can look towards Varus, who's also quite skill shot focused and needs to make combos happen to get his damage out. And then potentially going towards the likes of Jhin and the likes of Kai'Sa as well. But you should really focus on Ashe, Jinx, Misfortune, and Vayne to begin with. Jinx and Ashe especially are pretty easy champions to get to grips with at the beginning. In the support role, it will tell you there's a lot of different supports here, but I will tell you some of the more easy ones to kind of get to grips with. I would say that Soraka is a very easy support to start off with. She heals and she deals damage. That's pretty much it. Janna is an incredibly easy support to start off with. You'll start to unlock her as you go down the line. Lux, once you unlock her at level 9, she's an aggressive support, also a mid laner, so she has that ability to do both. If you're looking to be a bit more hands-on, if you get access to Braum, I would say he's relatively easy to play. And if you want to try out Blitzcrank, a bit more of an aggressive support, just need to make sure that you're landing your Q skill shot onto enemy champions. But yes, I would recommend Soraka, Blitzcrank, Janna, Lux, Braum, and even Sona, but Sona obviously is not unlocked at the start as well. When it comes to mid laners, as you can see, this is now separated out into assassins, so it's going to be a little bit more difficult. I'd say that assassins, and most of the assassins in the game, like Yasuo and Zed, they are quite hard to play to begin with. So I would recommend some easier mages to get you going. Annie is a very, very simple mid laner to play in the mid lane. I would definitely recommend her if you're looking to play mid lane. Ziggs is also pretty easy to play and does a lot of damage. It's got great tower pushing potential, and so I'd recommend Ziggs 100%. Ahri is okay. She's a little bit skill shot focused, and I would say is not super new player friendly. But Twisted Fate is a great pick if you want to learn how to influence the map as the starting mid laner. His ultimate needs to be used to influence bot and top lane, and so I would 100% recommend playing Twisted Fate if you can get your hands on him. Lux also, when she gets unlocked, is a pretty simple mage to play in the mid lane. So I'd recommend Lux, Twisted Fate. I would recommend Ziggs and Annie. Things like Fizz and Orianna can be a little bit more difficult to play. Fizz, you need to know your limits especially, and Orianna actually on Wildrift is quite difficult because you have to control the position of your ball at all times. Once you start to get more comfortable, things like Yasuo, Zed, and Fizz become a little bit more open to you. But Yasuo especially is not very new player friendly, neither is Zed. So these are picks that I would recommend going for when you've got a little bit more experience with the game and you're more comfortable with the control scheme. Now looking at the the jungle and the top lane role, and again they're not handily separated out on this particular graphic, but I would say in the jungle, Xin Zhao is an incredibly good pick to get your hands on. He's very powerful right now as well, and is relatively simple to play. So I'd recommend Xin Zhao in the jungle. Trying to have a look at the other ones. Jax is a really good jungle around top laner. He's pretty simple to play as well. In fact, one of the easiest and most powerful champions, I would say, to play in both of those roles. I would recommend Master Yi 100%. This is a champion that if you play well, he's incredibly simple to play, very focused on basic attacks, and can carry games single-handedly. Master Yi is an incredibly good jungle pick especially. Wouldn't really recommend playing him in any of the other lanes. Maybe top if you're confident, but jungle especially I would recommend playing Master Yi. Also Jarvan, he's a pretty simple character that's got a lot of CC built into his kit. I would definitely recommend playing Jarvan if you feel like it too. Other than that, I would kind of leave that as it is. When it comes to top lane, again, Jax, We talked about him previously. He's really strong. Definitely recommend playing Jax. Garen is an incredibly good top laner. I've seen him played in the jungle as well. Garen is very strong and is very simple to play as too. You just need to hit your spin to win button, which is your judgment ability, and then essentially use your ultimate to finish people off. I would definitely say that Jax is up there as one of the strongest top laners. Nasus is pretty strong, although does require a little bit of practice in last hitting to make sure that you're making use of his siphoning strike ability. Camille can be pretty strong, but I would say is fairly complicated to get the combos off correctly, but she's definitely something if you're looking to be a bit more hands-on in the side lane. She's got good split push pressure. Fiora is actually a pretty simple split pusher to get to grips with as well, so I'd recommend Fiora. But in the top lane, I would definitely focus on things like Jax and Garen to begin with. They are really strong top lane picks that will serve you well as you start to learn the game. So those are my recommendations for picks that you may want to pick up as you start the game, and hopefully that's going to help you get a head start in sort of Wildrift. I hope you've enjoyed my beginner's guide to Wildrift, everybody. I tried to be as comprehensive as possible, and I'm hoping that you guys will enjoy this and hopefully get some kind of use out of it. If you have enjoyed it, please feel free to subscribe, leave a comment and a like on the channel. It would be much appreciated. I'll be doing a lot of Wildrift content. This is the game that I have been waiting for. As a lot of you may know, I've produced content across a lot of games, but I started in Vainglory. I've worked in League of Legends for years. This has been the game that has married both my love for mobile games and my love for League of Legends into one. Wildrift has been my calling, and I really can't wait to start streaming it once the European beta comes out in December. Unfortunately, we'll not be able to stream the beta right now because I'm on about 200 ping and I just can't play properly, but I'm very much looking forward to streaming the European beta later on in the year. I'd also love if you would follow me on my social media channels, Twitter? Yeah, Twitter and Instagram. I respond on Twitter more so than I do on Instagram, but if you'd follow me there, that'd be absolutely fantastic. And I can't wait to sort of take this journey with you. I'll be doing a lot of gameplay and a lot of guide content, a little bit like I did with Vainglory. I'll be doing a lot of math-based content, which I know a lot of you really appreciated when I started off playing Vainglory. But this has been my complete beginner's guide. I may have missed out a couple of things here and there, but hopefully there's enough to get you started and playing Wildrift to a decent level. Thank you very much, guys. I will see you very soon.